This is the Conversations with the Mind podcast, where we explore consciousness through conversations with interesting people. Our mission is to engage the collective mind piece by piece to bring greater clarity of mind to our listeners locally and across the planet, and to contribute to broaden the shared experiential knowledge and wisdom of existence. All right, folks, welcome back to the Conversations with the Mind podcast. This is episode 46, and we're here with a very special guest, Abdul Wilkins, the Beantown Ghetto Shaman. How are you, sir?
Hey, what's up? How's everyone? How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing awesome. It's good to see you again. I think it's been a while since we actually saw each other face to face. I think it was the Detroit conference or probably a little bit after that.
Yes, it was. That was a little while ago. Yeah, I think that's definitely the last time we've seen each other, which was a very awesome conference, by the way. Kalindi, that guy, he's no joke. 40 grams and beyond. You gotta love that man. So yeah, but it was great being there and sharing space with people and meeting great people, even like yourself, man. So yeah, we're continuing the work, you know?
Yeah, nice. So one of the main reasons why I wanted to have you on the show is because, I'm friends with you on Facebook, and it seems like you and I, we look at the same news articles, we share the same stuff, we like a lot of the same content, but we come from very different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different cultural backgrounds, and yet you and I have this connection, like we like a lot of the same things. And so I really wanted to have you on the show for a lot of those reasons. I really value your take on consciousness. And so the first question I always ask is always the same question to all my guests. And that first question is, the podcast name is Conversations with the Mind. And I just want to get a sense from you, like, what does that phrase mean to you? What does Conversations with the Mind mean, and how does it resonate?
Great question. Conversations with the mind. When I hear that, I think of meditation. I think that's the first thing that comes to actually my mind is meditation. And there's all types of ways to meditate from all types of different traditions. When I teach I teach different type of classes, but I just recently taught a Reiki class, a Reiki 1 class, and I was talking to my students about meditation, and I was talking to them saying that it is, in all actuality, having a conversation with yourself, having a conversation with your subconscious mind, your unconscious mind, tapping into that part of you who you have to discover or rediscover. So, meditation could mean a lot of different things for different people, and there's all kinds of ways to meditate, but when I think of conversations with the mind, I think of meditation.
Nice. So you talk about like discovering and rediscovering this part of yourself. And I feel like that's so interesting too. Like, it's almost as if people have lost connection with who they really are, or lost connection with their spiritual or higher self. And through meditation and through psychedelic practices, we can like reconnect with the truth, and not these masks that we put on for other people, and not like the fake stuff that we put out on Facebook and the picture that we paint for people, but really communicating with that deeper sense of self.
Yeah, that's true, man. That's very true. I mean, we live in a time where it's all about filters. No one sees the so-called real you anymore, So, I mean, it's interesting, because I think that's why there's this whole resurgence and renaissance surrounding psychedelics. I think this is coming up right now in this time that we live in, because I feel a lot of people have to rediscover themselves. If it's not religion or something telling you that, this is how you got here, then really nobody really knows, how we got here. What is this thing called reality? What happens when we, call we experience this thing called death. What is this whole thing about? Well, you know, I think psychedelics, amongst many other type of things, are great tools to kind of discover some of those things about yourself in reality, you know, in my opinion, you know.
Yeah. So do you think like I definitely feel like there's a consciousness shift going on right now at this time in history, and you know that we're riding this new psychedelic renaissance, this wave,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Definitely.
Do you feel like with the people you're in contact with, do you feel like most people are seeking or hungry for self-discovery and for actualization? Or do you feel like, because a lot of people that I come in contact with as a professional therapist seem like they're not even interested in exploring
Mm-hmm.
the mind until I broach the subject with them. Do you find that a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people really want this inner exploration these days?
Uh, yes and no. Yes and no. I know is that at one point in time, I was studying Tibetan Buddhism in the early 2000s, and I met a lot of great lamas during that time, and a lot of great practitioners that just deal with deep levels of awareness. And what I learned in that school of thought is that no matter what age we are in, or in India they call them the yugas, um, there's this thing in Buddhism where they would call the afflictive emotions. Okay, so you know, like in Christianity, they also say things like the seven deadly sins and things of that nature. Um, well, I think that if one doesn't like check themselves, it doesn't matter what age a person's in. I think these afflictive emotions are always this human. And I really believe that, because I think that there's sometimes people they can romanticize history sometimes and think, okay, well, you know, there were these great times, or the golden age, which you would hear sometimes, or these, you know, ages of where we was much more advanced in technology and different things.
You're breaking up a little
Work,
bit. Sorry. You're breaking up.
but okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. So you were talking about, you know, different ages, like the Enlightenment age, the Golden Age, things like that, where we had advances in other forms of technology, and then I cut out.
Yeah, because the question, more people are interested in this, and I don't think so. I think it takes real courage to look at yourself, first of all, and it takes a lot of strength to be able to like just get out of the sheeple mentality and say, well, you know, what is this? Who am I? You know, what is this about? You know, and when I say no matter what age we're in, I think there's only a few people that really take those steps sometimes, because it's hard work. Let's face it, you know, but very rewarding work. You know, when I think of, for instance, like ayahuasca ceremonies, I do a lot of work with Mama Ayahuasca and other type of medicines. And if you ask some of the people that attend these ceremonies, they'll tell you real quick, this is not the food. You know, if somebody asks,
I think you're breaking up again. Can you hear me
can you
now?
hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, I can hear you.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know what's going on with the audio. Maybe it's yeah, I'm not sure, but we'll keep going. So you were talking about the
Okay.
ayahuasca circles. Sorry. No worries. Sometimes technology doesn't work in our favor.
Yeah, you're kind of breaking up now too.
Yeah.
Sorry. I heard you say something that technology doesn't work in our favor.
Yeah, so sometimes it doesn't help us out, but that's okay. We'll keep going. So you're talking about the ayahuasca
Yeah.
stories.
Yeah, I was just saying that in general, I think that yes, there might be I grew up in Boston in a city called Roxbury, right? And for instance, my father, he used to teach me a lot of different things about metaphysics, spirituality. We was doing yoga, Tai Chi, all that when I was younger. Right? And he was a great foundation for me. Now, back in the early 80s, you see now. So I do think things are changing. I do think more people are taking an interest in some of these ancient practices. But what I was trying to really make a point is that this is not easy work. When you talk about self, like when we're being born, right? Being born is not an easy job. You have to go through this canal, and you have to you have to go through these things, and then you're here. I think that's the same thing of being reborn, if you want to call that, or this rediscovery of your true self. It's not an easy task. So, unpeeling all these layers of trauma, unpeeling all these type of things that society and your family fed you to think that this is who you are. It's not easy work for self-discovery. It takes a lot of, patience. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of these different things. So I don't think that's something that's the main thing for everybody. Everybody doesn't want to raise their hand and say, well, me, it's time for me to look at my inner demons. I don't think that's something that's by popular view, but it takes a special type of individual to really go down that path and say, hey, I'm ready,
Yeah, so for our listeners out there that are listening right now, and maybe they're interested in this hero's journey or this journey of self-discovery, I like to call it your journey into your inner verse. And you got to face all the bad stuff, but you also get a lot of the good stuff too.
Yeah.
So for those people out there listening who want to do this, but maybe don't have the courage yet to start, what would be your advice? Like, how does someone get started on this kind of path?
Okay, well, the thing is that I think a great way to start, like, if a person want to talk about the psychedelic, what I think out of all the other type of medicines and different things that I've experimented with and took part, I feel mushrooms is a very, in my opinion, very safe and very type of experience for a person if they want to deal with the fungi. I think a lot of your listeners can start off very low, and there's a lot of people that might, so I think maybe for your listeners out there, maybe starting off with a gram or a gram and a half, and actual space that you can be able to explore doing this great sacred mushroom fungi. Make sure there's no type of distractions going on around you like that. So you want to have a space. First of all, you want to set up a sacred space. Getting a playlist, a sacred music or some type of music that you vibe with can be a good type of it could be that could be a good thing too for listeners as well. I think that sometimes music and sound in general helps ground people type of challenging experiences. So finding a sacred space for yourself, finding time for yourself, starting off slow. Don't, you know, you don't have to go with the super, what they call it, the heroic, you know, got to jump right into the deep end. You know, this is making sure you're comfortable while finding, you know, they in the psychedelic circles, we talk about having a that, you know, especially those more neutral, then we have someone there to just kind of even maybe rub your back or just be like, hey, you know, breathe, or what have you. And that kind of having someone by your side. He never took.
Okay, we're still cutting out pretty bad. It's hard to hear.
So there would be times where he would call out, yeah, I'm still there, man. Would help people sometimes as well, having a sitter, someone that can help ground you and assist you if you need any assistance.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, for my clients, I usually suggest, even before jumping into psychedelics, like people should start to familiarize themselves with their mind, either through meditation, you know, basic things like sitting with your breath and figuring out, like, you know, can I sit with how uncomfortable that's going to be to just sit there and do nothing, you know, because our culture teaches us that if we sit still, then we're lazy, and that gets really uncomfortable for us here in the West. And so
that's a very good point that you say that.
Yeah, so even meditation or things like journaling, you know, writing down your feelings, writing down your dreams, and really exploring and analyzing what happens in your mind before you take that leap deep with both feet, you know?
Yeah, for me, prior to doing mushrooms or anything like that, one way for me to familiarize or get to know my mind a little better was Tai Chi and Qigong. That was, that was one of the greatest gifts that I could really have, especially the time that it came to me. I would think I was 15 or 16 at the time. My father introduced me to Tai Chi and Qigong, but it was an older fella from my neighborhood who I had a lot of respect for, who introduced me to one of these masters. And man, it really saved my life, because I was such an angry teenager. You know what I mean? I was back in the early 80s, you know, early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, there was a lot of gang activity in Boston, you know, particularly in Roxbury, Mattapan, these areas. And so like having the martial arts, I did it, the arts coming into my life, and using the breath, for instance, you learning how to, with, especially in Qigong, it allowed me to kind of still my mind, you know, it allowed me to kind of check in with myself. Okay, I'm doing an interview right now. Okay. All right. That was my little ones right there, y'all. But yeah, I came across a book. It was a book called Becoming Your Own Therapist by Lama Yeshe. And I fell in love with the book, man. I was like, what is this, man? I was like, and it came to me at the right time, man, because first of all, just kind of doing more research on this guy named Lama Yeshe, I just loved his style. You know, he really was very skillful on how he brought his teachings to Americans. You know, he really was studying the psychology of his students here. So you would occasionally find Lama Yeshe sometimes at the strip bar, you know, at the gay parade. You would find him everywhere. And he was really sitting down, really trying to study his culture so he can really approach the Buddhist teachings of the Dharma in a much more effective way. But his book was very simple. That book just really had me think like, okay, where are these thoughts coming from? You know, and why are you thinking? You know, so at that time, I was a teenager reading this book, like around 17, 18, whatever. But it really shifts something in me because it allowed me to really have a check-in with myself. And I think we don't check in with ourselves. We're so much on go, 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 go. Like, you know, people don't even have the time to check in with themselves. So starting back from the basics, like you said, is a great way before even people sometimes jump into the psychedelics. I agree.
Yeah, and that's another thing that you and I connect a lot on is I'm a lifelong martial artist myself, and I come from different lineages and different styles than you, but still a lot of the base philosophies of martial arts remain the same. And I don't know much about Tai Chi or Qigong. I was wondering, can you explain to me a little bit of what the philosophy is behind it? Because they seem there's like softer martial arts, more energy. Whereas the ones I'm used to are like Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like harder styles, even though Jiu-Jitsu is considered the gentle art. Tai Chi is even way more gentle, you know?
Oh, more gentle. Yeah, it's interesting because when I first, I'll give you a example. Because I went to this martial arts class this morning. It was Bagua. It was a Bagua class. And I'm not that familiar with Bagua, but I'm starting to get more into it because one of my good friends who we both had the same Tai Chi teacher, he told me that he says Bagua is one of the three major not soft, but internal arts. So he was saying Tai Chi, Bagua, and I think he said another martial art called, I believe it's called Shenki or something like that. The third one I've never practiced, but he says those three essentially deal with cultivating this internal life force energy, which in China they call Qi, in Japan they call Ki. Different names depending on
things like that.
Yeah. So what's interesting about Tai Chi is that for so long, I, did not know the essence of what this art was really about. Because even myself, I was like, how can you defend yourself when you're doing these very slow type of movements? But what I realized, like one of my friends who studies Tai Chi was saying that you have to slow down to learn how to go fast. So I was like, what do you meant by that? So what I'm seeing is this, like, for instance, when I was in Bagua class, and I even seen this in Aikido, is that sometimes with Tai Chi, for instance, you have certain arts where they meet force with force. Like this person's coming at you, they're coming back at you. A lot of times with Tai Chi or even Bagua, somebody's coming at you, you're moving out the way, and you're allowing their own force to kind of take them off their center, So I see that a lot, especially in Tai Chi, that we have something called pushing hands. That's really big on learning the sensitivity of energy. What I've learned, especially with Qigong and Tai Chi as well, also, is that it's a whole different mindset than how we look at aging here in America or in the West. These guys really believe that as they practice these very slow type of movements, they cultivate this life force energy to actually, they actually believe they get stronger as they get older. So they say it reverses the aging process in such ways. And I could say that it's totally true because one of my old Tai Chi masters, if you look at this guy, he's an older guy, but they believe that as you cultivate yourself, your bones, for instance, get solidified, like full with Qi. like some Wolverine type of status. So for instance, my teacher, he would lay his arm on you. He looked like a small guy, but his bones were so dense that you would feel like, wow, like your bones feel like steel. So this Qi Kong stuff, it's very much like alchemy in a sense. So you do this whole inner transformation here, and they believe that you definitely get stronger as you get older. And when I see some of these old Tai Chi players, some of these guys are in their 70s, 80s, and they're flexible as anything, and they're vibrant as anything. So it must work, you know? And the Bagua teacher gave us an example. He says, you see this? He had this staff, you know, he had the weapons out. So he had this staff, and he says, you see this? He tries to put it over his knee. He says, very hard, but you know, I can break, I could still snap. He says, you see this? He got this little light jacket that he was laying on a chair or whatever. And he tried to do the same thing over his knee with the jacket. He says, very soft, but very hard to break, you know? So the essence of like Tai Chi, Qi Kong, or even, you know, Bagua and stuff, it's combining this softness, hardness. Got to know when to be soft, but also know when's the right time to bring the yang out or the hardness out. But yeah, it's very interesting. Very interesting stuff.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And you bring up two concepts that, you know, as a jiu-jitsu coach myself and an instructor myself, I try and teach these or instill these on my students too. But, you know, one was, you said, practice slow and you learn fast. And that's one thing I, you know, for our white belts, you know, you got to slow them down because they just want to learn and go fast, fast, fast. And they end up ingraining bad habits, you know, bad technique. And so you say, you know, you slow down in training and you get the muscle memory and you get the, you know, you get it slow, but you end up learning the technique much faster. And then you can start to speed up as you learn the technique. So I like that a lot. And then the other one you said, was yeah, like being flexible, right? So meeting force with force is not it's usually not beneficial for either party. But I've heard maybe different philosophies say like we need to be like a bamboo in the wind, right? So bamboo's really strong and firm, but it's not. It doesn't fight against the wind. You know, a harder tree will snap in the wind, whereas a bamboo kind of flexes and goes with it, and that's where it finds its strength, is in the flexibility. And so I really think that if I were to integrate more softer practices into my own thing, like more Tai Chi and things like that, I think for my Jiu-Jitsu, I could certainly like gain greater sensitivity because we're in a lot of physical contact, and I got to feel my opponent move so that I can use his force against himself. And I think if I were to integrate more of those softer practices, I'd probably get some superhuman powers in that sense.
I think it's amazing because I just love all the styles. You know, I think you can learn. I have another teacher. His name is Nassim. Shout out to Nassim. This guy's a beast. He knows Jiu-Jitsu and he does the Cambodian stick fight. He does all these type of styles, and he was way before his time. He was doing this like in the 60s, and he would get a lot of flack, you know, from his fellow martial arts, you know, fellow classmates and stuff, because people were so into traditional, you know. And I think Bruce Lee was one of those people, of course, that also broke that mold as well, to say, you know, starting off with Wing Chun and then saying, hey, you know, is this very practical out in the streets, you know, and being able to be flexible. You know, like he's all, Bruce used to say, be like water, you know, so being able to be like a chameleon, if anything, in that moment. So, and I think that was displayed even perfectly when in that fight in the movie, you know, I know it's still a movie, but it was still, you know, displayed in a very great way with Chuck Norris and Bruce, you know, and how, you know, and you've seen how Bruce was getting messed up in the beginning with Chuck Norris, right? Chuck was kicking his ass. But then he said, Bruce says, okay, hold on, I got to change this up. you know? And that's when you've seen him even bring in a little boxing type of flavor. And because Bruce, you know, if people read about Bruce Lee, he studied a lot of fighters, including even Muhammad Ali, you know? And if you look at even how Ali fights, the guy, you know, he didn't get tired. He was so light on his feet. He was so relaxed. He was a very relaxed fighter, which gave an advantage to him, because in the philosophy of Tai Chi and all that, they always say softness overcomes hardness. This is the Tao, you know, like the Tao Te Ching. So it's interesting. And I noticed that even the other day when I was at Bagua class, we were sparring. You know, I was sparring with one of my friends, Joe, and I was going so hard for a second, I didn't catch myself. And, you know, we're sparring, doing the push in and stuff. And he says, soften, dude, soften. Because as I'm going so hard, I noticed I got tired. My arms was tired, you see? So it even had me think about, like, say, for instance, if somebody was in a battlefield, right? And say, for instance, we're in a battlefield, we have to fight for hours, you know, even maybe go for days in fighting. If someone's not soft or connected with the energy, they're going to go so aggressive that they're going to burn out real quick with their energy, right? So it's a level of preserving or cultivating this energy. I think this is the secret behind this Tai Chi, Qigong, Bagua stuff. You know, I think it's all really about this cultivating this life force energy, and thus maybe having some even supernatural type of abilities to come from this. You know?
Yeah, like life extension, like you mentioned, or gaining strength, maybe fighting diseases, fighting cancer, things like that too.
Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
So,
I mean, the Bagua teacher today, it was so interesting when you start to be sensitive to this energy stuff. He said, "Feel this, Dooley." Right? First, he projected this energy out of his hand, and I felt this heat coming from his hand. Then he says, "Feel this." Then from the heat switched to some cool energy. So I was like, wow. I was like, you know, I've felt the heat before, but I've never really felt so much of the cool emanation from the hand. So I was like, wow, this is interesting. This guy's dealing with some interesting stuff here. You know what I mean?
nice.
So yeah.
Yeah, so I think most people who find martial arts initially get into it, obviously, for the physical aspect and the self-defense piece, right?
Yeah.
But you and I both know from practicing it for a lifetime now that there's much more that the martial arts offer, and it's almost like when you do it long enough, you start to live almost like the way of the warrior, you know, and it's a lot more than just being a martial artist, but it bleeds into other areas of your life. And so what is your take on, you know, the way, and it can be different, like your way, the way for you is Tai Chi and Qigong and Reiki, and the way for me is Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu and MMA, but it's all the way of the warrior. It's the path of the warrior. What do you think about that?
Well, it's interesting. I don't know if you ever read this book. It's called The Peaceful Warrior.
Oh yeah, I love that book.
By Dan Millman. I love that guy. I think he's a great writer, you know, great writer. I've read many of his books, and it's funny, when I was reading some of his novels, I was going through a lot of I thought the book was talking about a story about me at the time. I was like, wow, man, this guy's really in tune with some things there. But it's even from that book, for instance, The Peaceful Warrior. The main character, teacher, Socrates, right? He was showing the young man that a different side of what a warrior means. You know, a warrior for me really means really conquering your own self, conquering your own demons, right? And we could call it demons, we could call it our lower self, we could call it our animal self. But it's really, that's why I think at the essence of a true warrior is. When we look at even Mike Tyson, right? Iron Mike. For your listeners out there, I know they probably heard that he probably recently took Bufo, the Bufo toad medicine, you know, the 5-MeO-DMT. And we look at Mike, we all understand he's a great warrior, you know what I mean? At his height,
No one can mess with this man. He was the world heavyweight champion of the world, and no one wanted to step in this ring with this man. Ferocious, right? Yet Tyson says when he took that toe, he was trembling on his knees. I mean, he was like, "Hey, I've dealt with some warriors, but I've never dealt with any warrior like this called this toe, this little ribbit, whatever." He knocked me on the mat for sure, So I understand that, because even like, for instance, the Bufo, when I brought, when we had a shaman here that did some ceremony work with us, some of these people were taking Bufo for the first time. And I told these guys, I told these individuals, I was like, hey, this is not a walk in a park medicine, all right? Prepare yourself, And some of these people really didn't know what I was talking about. And like I said, they had to meet themselves. They had to, and some of these people weren't ready to meet themselves. And I see one guy was literally, man, clawing at his face, punching himself. When he got down from the Bufo experience, it looked like he was in a fight, So this is what happened. When I asked him what his experience was, I said, hey, would you like to share with us? And he said he thought he was going to die. All right. Now, that was a fear for him. But when we look at warriors are ones who go into those dark places that seem very scary. All right. That's why even when we look at George Lucas, for instance, right? And he was highly influenced by that guy. I love this guy too, Joseph Campbell. He wrote the
Hero's Journey,
Warrior with 1,000 Faces or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Real great guy on breaking down the collective unconscious on the level of symbolism. All right. George Lucas was inspired by Joseph Campbell, right? And you look at his symbolism within Star Wars. We look at that moment when Luke Skywalker has to go into that cave and deal with himself. If Luke Skywalker wants to become a great warrior, a great Jedi, he first has to deal with himself, with his fears. All right? What I've learned through a lot of these medicines is this, if we want to call this thing the Matrix or whatever, or the holographic universe or whatever, this Maya or Kali Yuga, whatever, you know what I mean? If we want to call this the daggone samsara or whatever, this, to get out, the way we get out is by going in. Mm-hmm. And the way we go in is dealing with this fear, because the thing that runs this show is fear. Straight up.
Yeah, fear and its opposing force, love. I think both of those run this whole show. And can you imagine?
And I think, like my mother told me a long time ago, she said, son, I asked her, I was like, Mom, what's the purpose of evil? I was like, what is this? And she's like, son, you cannot understand goodness, beauty, compassion, love, any of these things without knowing its dual opposite. All right? And that's the beautiful thing of, like, even for me, my first Bufo experience with the toe allowed me to see the bigger picture. Allowed me to see the bigger picture. Allowed me to say, okay, wow. When I went into singularity, it allowed me to say, wow, well, Great Spirit is the bum. He's the crackhead. He's the prostitute. He's the killer. You know what I mean? He's all these things, So from that experience, it allowed me to understand that everything is love, first and foremost. And second of all, this fear, we come down here in physical form because what I've learned is that God, spirit, whatever, it seeks experience. It seeks experience, and through this experience, it created itself to be able to know itself. So when I got this deep download, I was like, wow, this is a paradox, a big time paradox. I was like, how can something that knows everything but yet not know everything at the same time. I'm like, what's going on here? I was like, how can something, know everything yet still seek experience, still constantly learning, seeking knowledge and wisdom,
Right,
And
that's the essence or the initial motivation for that oneness consciousness, and it's kind of reflected in a fractal way in those of us warriors who do choose to embark on this path of self-discovery and experience. It's the same exact construct, the same process, but manifested in an individual state. And can you even imagine, like, all the journey work you've done and I've done, and the fears and the parts of ourselves that we face that have been really scary, and that was scary for us. Imagine what it was like for Mike Tyson, being a scary individual like him, facing scary ass Mike Tyson. That was probably terrifying for anybody, and probably took a man like Mike Tyson to face someone like Mike Tyson in that ring in his head.
What's the word that they call for your evil double? They call it the doppelganger. Doppelganger, right? I don't know if you've seen the recent. I love Marvel, by the way. I love comics. Used to always read comics since I was a little one. But there was this. I recently watched on Hulu, Cloak and Dagger. I just finished watching that, and there was one episode. Spoiler alert for those who didn't see it yet, but there was one episode where, like, spoiler alert, put your hands over your ears. Nah, I don't hear anything. There was one episode where the main characters had to deal with their evil side, and I felt that episode was very interesting because the hero, this other side of him knew all these insecurities about him. You know what I mean?
You can't lie to it. You can't lie to your.
He was sitting right at him. He's like, and you know what? And guess what? You are a failure. You're the reason your mother is this. And he was in. And what I got from that episode is he definitely had to tap into his zen. Not only did he have to tap into his zen, this brother had to stand in his power to know that, you know what? I'm okay being not perfect all the time, whatever we want to deem as perfect. It's okay. I'm okay with fucking up sometimes, because that's how I'm going to learn. That's how I'm going to make myself a better person. Okay. But in that Marvel series, that character, he had to stand in his power. And when he stand in his power, and when he came to a place of self-acceptance, that's when the double ganger or whatever had to leave. It had no power over him anymore, And
he accepted all parts.
Yeah, I mean, I see this theme coming up over and over, and they explore this theme all the time in these movies, and I think it's brilliant. But like, it's another film that I love also. It's like old school film, Jacob's Ladder. All right. And that film is just off the hook because, it's multi-layered. It's talking about experiments on soldiers, with our government, all kinds of stuff. But the thing is, the soldier doesn't know he's dying. He doesn't know that he's going through the bardo, what they call in Tibetan Buddhism, that in-between state before you take another birth. He doesn't know that he's dying or he's about to be dead or whatever, right? He's seeing all these strange type of monster type of figures chasing him, throughout the movie. There's one person in his real life that's a big friend to him and, mentor to him, this chiropractor, right? So while he's in this bardo or this astral or spirit place, he sees his chiropractic friend. And he says, hey, these demons, these guys keep chasing me. And this guy, it was the most classic quote I've ever heard. He said, well, your demons are nothing but your angels. He said something, I probably don't got the quote totally down, but he says, basically he was saying, your demons are nothing but your angels in disguise. And I was like, what? I was like, who the fuck wrote this shit? I was like, yo, I was like, man, somebody's doing their homework, so, yeah, this stuff is amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. So
Excuse me. I'm doing this interview. Y'all two have to go in your room and play with your toys for a second, okay? I'll be in there in a second, all right? Thank you. Thank you. All right, bye-bye. 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 Come on. Yep. Sorry about that.
No,
yeah.
No worries. Yeah. So that's awesome. I'm gonna have to watch that movie, Jacob's Ladder.
Oh yeah, classic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I was reminded of is, for jujitsu, there's a lot of internal work that happens with jujitsu too. So we're learning physical techniques and everything, but when you first start, especially for the first few years, people are choking you out and submitting you all the time, hundreds of times every time you go in. And it really takes a warrior and a lot of courage to have that happen to you and then go back for more, knowing that it's my opponent that is going to be my best teacher, because I learn about myself through my opponent. And when you're on the mat, and you're dealing with yourself, you get your ego smashed every single day. And it's really a journey. It's much like a psychedelic journey where you face your biggest demons, things like fear of failure and fear of survival and feeling like you're about to die literally. And then you're able to let go of your ego and your pride and just do the task at hand. So I find it to be very spiritual for sure.
When you have martial artists, right? Doesn't matter what tradition they come from, all right? When you have a martial artist that gets at the essence of the martial art, of the art, they understand that the whole thing is not about fighting. The whole thing is about really refining yourself.
It's about life, yeah.
It's about life. And I'll give you an example, even at the Bagua class today. And I get what you're saying, even about like, damn, do I have to go? Why am I coming back to this? And because there'll be moments you're going through a movement, or the teacher's trying to show you something, somebody smack you in the head or do this, and if you're a person that's really dealing with ego, then the person's gonna get embarrassed there, or it's somebody. Say for instance, this is another example. Say for instance, everybody else seems like they can catch on to the move that the teacher is trying to show everyone in class, and you just can't get it, and you feel like, oh man, I'm not good at this, or I suck at are the rest of the guys going to look at me like a wimp or whatever. A lot of these things are great teachings for people that are in the martial arts, because it's, again, chipping away at all these things that you think are yourself. You know what I mean? You're chipping away at all these things that you think, how society or how these people are looking at you. It's to start to have more confidence in yourself and say, hey, I'm okay with me. I'm really okay with me.
Yeah, it's all an illusion anyway. It's all an illusion anyway. All the thoughts that we have in our head, it's all an illusion. And so you chip those illusions away until you get to the truth.
Exactly. Very much so. Because, that's, until people really get a sense that this is, we people can intellectualize about these things and say, well, this is an illusion, we're in a hologram, or, this, that, and other things, vibration. We can understand it on an intellectual level. And it's great that we're talking about this. But until someone experiences it themselves, it's nothing like it. It's nothing, you will not come back the same. How can you? You know what I mean? It's, I remember after I did my first Bufo experience, there was a moment where I got a little depressed. Because I went to a place that was so blissful, so beautiful. You know what I mean? That when I came back and I was on the bus going back to Boston from Manhattan, just a sense of a little sadness came over me. And I felt that sadness for a couple of days, because I knew that I wasn't just this body. You know what I mean? Just from that experience I had, I was like, wow, I want to go back home, Even with the beautiful friends and wife and kids and all that, there's still a part of me like, wow, I know this is not it. I want to go back home, So, it's interesting.
Very
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, I call that experience having a rough landing. And it happens to me quite often, you know, especially with, on my ketamine journeys when I come back from those. And I get a taste of what reality is again, and I come back and it's almost, you know, I look around at people getting really caught up in everyday life and you know, the 9 to 5 and, you know, worrying about what people think and getting all these, you know, mental health issues. And it does bring a bit of sadness knowing that you know,
Yes.
we have this
Yes.
information that we're so much more, and we wish everybody else around saw it too, and that we could break
Right.
through from these
Right.
societal patterns that are like really closing us off as human beings. You know, we're in our society, we're very tied in with like industry and materialism and all this stuff, and it's sad when you come back and you're like, why are we focused on the wrong things? You know.
It reminds me of like I seen that film on Netflix, Love, what is it? Love, Death and Robots, I believe it's called. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. It's dope. It's a real dope show. And it's all talking all about technology, right? And but there was one scene on the show. There's like 15, 20-minute like episodes on each show, and they're like these animation and different things. But they had one scene where there was this type of world, miniature universe, whatever, in this couple's refrigerator, right? So it was really, when you talk about something psychedelic, they opened up their refrigerator and they seen this world like this, like they opened it up and it looked like some early caveman, Neanderthal type of civilization going on, right? And they're like, and he's like, honey, come look at this. What the hell? What's going on here? You know? And they close. I can imagine, like, they're looking at each other. Did you smoke something? Did we drink something today? What's going on? So they close the refrigerator again, right? Just a couple of seconds. Open it again. Now it's at a different stage of evolution. Now from the caveman, now it's like the horse and buggy, you know, going through. Then they close the refrigerator again, open it again. Now it's dealing with flight, and you know, it was that episode was crazy. One thing, and then when they closed it again, they opened it. It showed humanity going at war, right? So it shows this big bomb going off, and he's like, "Wow, what the hell?" And it's like these planes going through, like, and shooting and all this stuff, right? Then they closed the refrigerator and they opened it up another time, right? And now it seems like civilization got to a place of celestial type of like macabre. We've ascended, you know, all these type of lights and stuff. And then they close the refrigerator again and open it again, and it starts from the beginning again, back at caveman. All right. So I'm like, what are they trying to really show here on this episode? I was like, what is this? And first of all, I love the idea that they was playing with the concept of time. All right. Because that becomes a big one, especially when we deal with, you know, altered states of mind. All right. I don't care if you're in a trance drumming. I don't care if you're in a trance and you're dancing and doing a sacred dance. I don't care if you're in that zone and doing martial arts or even eating a mushroom. When you're in that trance-like state, time gets different, man. You know what I mean? So I like that, you know, there was plenty of times where I would go on a journey, right? Eat a mushroom, whatever. There would be times where it would seem like I was gone for thousands of years. And there was maybe 30 minutes or an hour. So that whole concept of just playing with time and also showing that these cycles, what is this thing that we're in here? You know, is this just ongoing cycles that just go on forever? And how do you get out this? Are we supposed to get out these cycles? I mean, this is interesting.
Yeah, so the time aspect is really interesting, and I practice Buddhism too, and it's mostly from the Tibetan lineage as well. So it's really cool. I didn't know that about you, but Buddhists talk about time very different than Westerners. Whereas in the West we think about it very linearly, but in Buddhism, time, the past, present, and future exists simultaneously in the same space. And when you're describing the refrigerator, opening it up, that's what it reminded me of. Is like, I've heard of monks being able to literally like time travel in their mind and go back in the past or forward into the future and create actual changes in the physical space. And even at the Detroit conference, I think Kalindi was talking about some of his experiences where he's been able to travel time or travel to different dimensions and actually have an effect in the physical world when he comes back. That's really interesting to me, because we think of time travel as like we have to build a machine to do it, but really the time travel machine is up here the whole time if we learn how to do it.
You could say that again, my friend. Yeah, it's very true what you say. I mean, when we look at, I mean, this is interesting. I totally believe when we deal with technology, right? I believe all the technology that we can ever really express is all inside of us. You know, when we look at things like cars or the plumbing system and all that, they're all mimicked, they're all based off of the human anatomy system. You know what I mean? So you look at technology around you and you see that technology is really born through natural things, right? They just mimic things from nature, right? So the same thing with time travel, right? I had a good friend that actually was in the Navy, right? Older gentleman. And he told me a long time ago, he said, Dooley, the Philadelphia experiment was real, all right? He said it was a real thing. And he says, yes, they definitely jumped into, I think, they jumped 40 years into the future or whatever. They even made a movie about that, right? But you could see what happened with the Philadelphia experiment. It was a disaster in many ways. You know, it was said that people were merged into the ship. People were phasing in and out of reality. I mean, all kinds of crazy shit. So we look at the mechanical technology, you know, type of approach to time travel. And then we look at the more natural approach. When we understand that time travel is a real phenomenon. I look at even, for instance, the macabre, all right? For instance, within the Jewish mysteries, the Hebrew mysteries, they talk a lot about the macabre-like vehicle. There's many people that when they go deep into the Kabbalah, they understand that there's many different people that claim they got to that spiritual station where they can turn their body literally into light and travel, all right? Now, the same phenomena is spoke about also in Tibet. They call it the rainbow body technique, all right? If I'm not mistaken, I believe there's over 200,000 documented cases of people witnessing these lamas, these rinpoches, these high-level beings, turning their body into light and leaving sometimes nails, you know, and pieces of hair behind.
Yeah, we know too that the human body emits its own light too. That's been studied and measured as well. So someone sitting in a completely dark room where there's no light, if you had a detector in there, you would be able to pick up on a person's light body because every single cell emits a little bit of energy and a little bit of light, even though it might be faint.
That's amazing. That's amazing, man. You know, so I thought about the light body when you're talking about time travel, because recently I read a book called Shape Shifting. It was called Shape Shifting. Shit, I can't remember. I'll go in another room to see if I can find the book real quick for you. But the book was amazing. It was talking about these shapeshifters all throughout the Amazon and these different shamans that have this ability to shapeshift. Long story short, there's a point in the book, towards the end of the book, where this guy, one of the guys who's the guy that actually wrote the book, experienced going into an orb, you know, manifesting into this orb, right? Sounds a lot like, you know, the macabre too, right? And while he had this experience, he experienced time travel, you know? And when he was time traveling, there were actually certain people in those time periods that seen him. It was in a book, they showed one guy that was about to execute this person. And he looked up and the guy that wrote the book was talked about how he was watching the whole situation. The guy looked up and seen him. He acknowledged, you know, so it wasn't something coming from this guy's, the writer's own head. You know, this was a deep experience he had. So I believe definitely there was natural ways to manipulate time, to be able to bend time, to be able to time travel. Even the first time I even heard of something called the time travel plant was through this book, Supernatural by Graham Hancock, right? That was the first time I heard about iboga or ibogaine, right? Very well known to help addiction, from the Beachweed tradition in West Africa. You know what I mean? And what's so interesting, Graham Hancock talks about how there's an association of this iboga plant being able to help people time travel or go back to these places of trauma. That's why I think that iboga is so successful with addiction, because these people are going back to those places and setting up different scenarios. You know, like you were saying with Kalindi, going to these places and changing these situations. So, you know, these people that go back to the time where they most might have sniffed that first line of cocaine or shot that first whatever, now they have an option to do something different. You know what I mean? Now they could say, hey, you know what? Nah, you know what? I'm cool, man. You know, I want to, I'll just drink a beer or whatever tonight. You know what I mean? So in all actuality, they changed their reality. And when they come back from that experience with the iboga, it's like a 90% success rate with addiction, with no withdrawal symptoms at all. That's amazing to me. That is fucking amazing to me. You know what I mean? And like, again, to me, when we think about the opioid crisis, what? Come on, y'all. What the fuck, man? You know what I mean? We're dealing with people that are dealing with addiction. Why aren't we dealing with iboga right here in the United States? I mean, this is just fucking ridiculous, man. Yeah, excuse me, man. I get passionate.
No, it's all good. I have an explicit content like label on my podcast just to let people know. But I have an awesome story that goes right along with that too. And this is how I think about time travel as well. And I think, through a regular therapy, I used to be an addict to a lot of different drugs, opiates, meth, cocaine, alcohol, all these things. And I went through an inpatient treatment facility and everything, and we dug really down deep to why I had addictions in the first place. And what we discovered was that I had a deep sense of abandonment from my father. My father left when I was 1.5, and I never talked to him until I was 24 again. And then my mom was an alcoholic while I was growing up, so I felt abandoned by her as well, like not good enough. And I had a particular psychedelic experience where I wanted to overcome the abandonment issue, since I knew that was the source of the addiction. And I swear, like, I felt like I time traveled back to the first point in which I felt abandonment. And I was 4 years old, and I saw myself, it was at my aunt's wedding. It was at a hotel, and it was late at night. All the adults were at a party, and my babysitter fell asleep in the hotel room, and I locked myself out of my hotel room at 4 years old. Just trying to explore in the hallway and lock myself out. And no one to be found. The door or the hallway seemed like it went on for infinity, and I just felt like so alone and abandoned. And I can remember myself curling up in a ball, like as this little kid, just feeling like I was about to implode. And it was from that moment forward, after that realization, what I was able to do, and this was a technique taught to me by a monk in Thailand, that I was able to apply, sort of like inner child work. I was able to project my current self back to my past self and comfort and give the nurturing that I needed in the moment. I was able to nurture little Shane, and in that moment, I was healed. And I came out of that experience completely different. I felt like I healed my own abandonment issues, but also like I gained the knowledge that I can heal anything in myself. As if I feel like I'm not being nurtured or valued, I can be my own healer. And that was a huge insight from that.
Yes. I mean, first of all, I want to salute you for that work that you just did right there. That's big, first of all. And I commend you for that. You know what I mean? Because again, this is not easy work. And it's not easy sometimes looking under the things that we sweep under the rug, or some of the things that we're not even aware that we're, holding. A lot of times we're not even aware of some of the shit that we're holding inside of us. Some of the trauma, because some of the stuff can be so, could be very young at the time. A lot of my interest in healing came from my mother being labeled as schizophrenic. The courts got involved with me and my sisters because, I think my mom did some terrible things to us at the time. And one time when, I was having a joint with my mom, we was talking, and she told me like, yeah, I try to kill y'all, and I try to kill y'all because I didn't want you to deal with the demons that I was feeling. So all I know is one of my sisters had a burn mark on her foot. I don't know what happened to me. And sometimes things can happen to people, especially when we're so young. It's always there. You know what I mean? Some people call it the Akashic records or what have you. That could just be another term translated as just your DNA memory. But it's always there. I don't care what experience that a person deals with. Even if our conscious mind might not remember it, it's always there.
Yeah, there's a book called The Body Keeps Score about how cells hold on to those traumatic memories too, even if your consciousness doesn't.
Interesting. I got to check that out. Because, what's interesting about that is I've seen, and they call this soul retrieval a lot also within the shamanic, communities where trauma occurs. It's so intense that the all great spirit made us that we can leave our body, right? When something gets so traumatic, so we won't be fully present in our body, because it's just too horrific for someone to experience all that at that moment, right?
Yeah, people experience that during like rape situations and stuff, like your consciousness leaving your body.
Exactly. So the whole concept of soul retrieval is that, again, you're going, usually the shaman or whoever, there's some drumming, usually to put you in that state where you're in that trance-like state, so you can go travel and pick up bits and pieces of yourself that you left behind, parts of your psyche that broke off. And thus, you usually hear about these people going back to usually times when they're very small and telling their childlike self, it's okay, you're protected now. You're going to be all right. You can come with me, and usually, most of the times people coming back from them situations, they feel more wholesome. They feel more, just more grounded, more, a different person. You know what I mean? This happened to one of my friends one time when he was taking mushrooms. We were at the park, and it was three of us, and we was going to do some ceremony work with mushrooms, and he started having, a quote unquote bad trip. And what was interesting is that intuitively something told me to do a guided meditation with him, right? And I don't know where that came from, but it just intuitively something told me to say, hey man, I want to see you going back to your mother. I don't know why, but something, and I went through this guided meditation with her. And I said, yeah, see yourself in your mother's arms, see her at her bosom, you're safe. Do you know this man, as I'm saying this to him, he literally fell on the floor and went into this whole fetal position. It was like he was reliving that, going back to that place at that very moment. And man, it was amazing to witness and see that. So yeah, man, that type of work is amazing. And I tell people too, even in regards to like time travel, I've been doing like Reiki healing for about 14, 15 years now. And some of the classes that I teach, we speak a lot about time travel, how you can manipulate the time, how you can bend time and space, and essentially within Reiki, we use, there's 4 traditional symbols, but we use one of the symbols that deal with time travel, which is the Hong Sha Ze Shonin
symbol, you know? So a lot of stuff in my class talks about how you can send that healing Reiki energy back to those moments where you feel, you know, violated or felt disrespected or what have you. You know, it doesn't take away, it doesn't erase the situation, but yet it lessens the sting. You know what I mean? You're bringing a healing energy to support you in that moment of terror or whatever. Same thing we learn in Reiki, how you could even send energy into the future as well. We learn how to like send energy, for instance, if you have a court date or interview and you might feel a little nervous, there's that energy waiting for you so you walk into it and feel a little more grounded or serene. Nice. So yeah, it's interesting.
So let's jump right into shamanism, because that's a particular interest of mine too. And I was wondering if you could explain what your name means, the Beantown Ghetto Shaman, because I remember that very clearly from the Detroit conference. And but I never got an explanation, because to me Beantown means Chicago, right? The big bean in Chicago. But no. Actually, it's a nickname for Boston, Beantown. That's right. That's right.
The bean, and so you know, it's just repping where I come from. But also the Beantown Ghetto Shaman. I use ghetto for an acronym, you know, and the acronym is Gifted Hearts Equal Towards Total Oneness. All right. So Gifted Hearts Equal Towards Total Oneness. All right. I came from the hood. You know, I grew up in Roxbury. I grew up in the same neighborhood as not that far from Bobby Brown. He grew up over there in Orchard Park projects. You know, I grew up between two Warren projects at the time, Warren Gardens projects and St. Joseph projects. You know what I mean? So so a lot of things changed in Boston from the time that I grew up. Some of the neighborhoods are a little more safer, but you know, at 11, you know, that's when I got my lesson of learning about gangs. And it was like, you know, I was going to an after school program, and my grandmother gave me a Scully or a winter hat that had this football logo on there, the Raiders, you know. So I was walking to my after school program, and these older guys, they come up to me, and I think I was 11 at the time, and they had to be like 17, 18. And they're like, you know, you're down with the Raiders? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And next thing I know, I see all these fists coming at me, and they knocking, they're beating the shit out of me. And this old guy sees me, so, you know, I run, and he said, hey, you need a ride? And, you know, tears coming down my face. And I just remember that experience overnight. I realized that the world's not always safe. You know, I was a very innocent child, you know, but from that point, I was like, you know, I'm going to have to get hard. I'm going to have to build up some type of hysteria around me for my own protection. And so, you know, ghetto, you know, we know that word, you know, really was dealing with the concentration camps with, you know, the Jews and stuff. But, you know, this is a word that has been used through slums or inner cities throughout wherever, you know. So I come from the ghetto, you know what I mean? So in the Beantown Ghetto Shaman, you know what I mean? So I didn't call myself a shaman. This is something kind of the streets gave me, you know, and I got kind of that stamp on me when I started this car on the street with my energy. You know, it was this guy on the street, his car was down, and I was with one of my friends, one of my first Reiki students, Brother Ant. And I was like, yo, Ant, we'll start this car, man. And my friend was like, my friend Anthony or Ant was like, man, dude, you're fucking crazy, man. You can't start the car, man. I was like, yeah, man. I was like, yo, I feel this energy in me. I know we could start this car, man, you know? So, I rode up to the guy and I say to him, you know, I was like, hey, it looks like, you know, I'm having a hard time here. And he's like, yeah, I've been stuck here for a while, da, 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 da. And I was like, you mind if I try something, you know? So, long story short, I visualize all this chi energy, beam of light coming through the crown of my head. And I visualize it going through my body. And then I see it coming through my arms and my hands. And I see this light going into his engine. So when I feel like the energy was enough for it going in the engine, I said, okay, start it, man. Try to start it. He starts the car and the guy goes crazy. He's like, how did you do that? So, I did it again, and I did it another time. So people started like just getting, hearing things, the word got out on the street, like, yo, this guy Dooley, he's a particular strange type of cat, he's a shaman. Matter of fact, he's the ghetto shaman, so, I've been through a lot of different schools of thought, but where I'm at currently in my own spiritual development has been doing a lot of work with the teaching plants and the teaching fungi and stuff. And it's just been opening up a whole different world to me, man. And it's just amazing work, amazing stuff, man,
So how does a kid from the inner city develop an interest in the mind and consciousness, and then eventually want to pick up holistic medicine? I don't hear that story too often.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a person is usually their environment. There's no getting around it. You
said your mom was a big influence too.
Yeah, I have to give credit to my foundation, my parents. If it wasn't for them, I know for a fact, at one point, my mom moved to DC, to Washington, DC, and she was in a very rough neighborhood. And I remember at one point in time, Washington, DC was the murder capital at one point, and I know for a fact, if I grew up with my mom, I probably wouldn't be here. I know probably me and you wouldn't even talk. I might have been dead or maybe locked up somewhere. Who knows? You know what I mean? But I do know, like, people are their environment. You know what I mean? If something doesn't step in to teach someone or to show a better way, I mean, I'll give you an example. One of my good friends for many years, he's from Virginia, and he became a Crip. He joined the gang, the gang Crips, and he didn't want to become a gang member or a gang banger. It was his environment. One day they moved to these projects, and him and his brother, he seen his first murder when he first moved there, and he's looking out the window and he sees his first murder, and he says to his brother right there, he says, you know what, tomorrow I'm down with those guys, because it was basically survival.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be one of them. I'm not going to be the victim there, so it's like, get down or lay down, you know what I mean? So, and I think some people that don't come from these environments or have never seen any of these type of things, it's hard for them to relate or even show a sense of empathy or compassion towards a lot of people that go through these things. Because a lot of people, unfortunately, they come from mindsets where, oh, just work hard, just pull yourself up from your bootstrap mentality. And sometimes life is not that simple, you know what I mean? Sometimes life is not that simple like that, you know what I mean? It's, I just feel blessed that I came from a family that schooled or installed certain values in me from a very young age. Even though these things was installed in me, it was a time in my life where I didn't feel safe in my neighborhood. You know what I mean? And, a lot of that spiritual stuff that my father and my mother gave to me was kind of thrown out the window for a little while for me, and, I just seen a lot. I met a lot, I met killers, I've hung out with pimps, I've known prostitutes. So it's like, my story is very interesting because at one point, I could chill with the killers and the pimps and the drug dealers, but then there's other parts of my life where, I'm thinking about becoming a monk. And, I was at this, this Buddhist temple where I almost met the Dalai Lama. He was in the back, yard where this temple was at, where we was at. And I swear, if I wasn't with my father at the time, me and the Dalai Lama would have been chatting that day. Because I would have been like, yo, Dalai Lama, what up? What up, homie? What's going on? Let's chop it up, you know? But my father's more conservative on that level. So I was like, you know, yeah, I would have probably heard it from my pops later that day.
Yeah,
but,
so you talk about the importance of your direct family and your ancestry, you know, your parents. But another thing that really interested me about you when you spoke at the Detroit conference was, and a lot of the speakers brought this in, was being able to tap into like your ancestral knowledge or what's been passed down, and how do you so not only that, not only how do you inform yourself with your ability to utilize ancestral memory, but also now as a parent yourself, like, and I consider you and myself psychedelically informed, so we've been to those other spaces, we know, we've seen the reality of our world, and now we come back. How do you use your psychedelically informed and your ancestral knowledge to help your parenting these days?
Well, that's a good question. Like you said, like Kalindi was saying, how you can manipulate, you know, certain things or change certain things. I do a lot of work, ancestral work on the spirit realm. A lot of work on the spirit realm for my ancestors in my direct family. So for instance, my father, the last ayahuasca ceremony I was at, I did a lot of work for my father that. My father is a champion, he's a warrior, but you have even wounded warriors, right? What happens to the healers when they need healing, right? So my father for many years did anti-gang prevention work, anti-AIDS type of work and stuff. And in the 80s, there was so much gang violence, like I was saying in Boston at the time. 1 week he's working with one youth, next week he's going to their funeral. So a lot of that took a toll on my father over the years, to the point that my father, you know, he's never been diagnosed with anxiety, but I know he does suffer from that. You know, he has a hard time being around a lot of people and things. So my last ayahuasca experience, you know, ceremony I was at, you know, I was out my body and, you know, I was conversating with my father's spirit. And my son, who's only 2 years old, showed up in the spirit realm as a teenager. And me and my son had a very good talk with my father. And I seen the difference, you know. You could see the little subtle differences, you know, on when you work with certain things in the spirit world and see how things trickle down into the physical world. Very interesting stuff. And I think that the more you even do your own work for your own self, I think they talk about the 7 generations. So when you do your work on your own self, you're healing your own particular bloodline as well, because we know epigenetics is real. You know, sometimes we have certain experiences or memories that aren't our memories, you know, and we're asking ourselves, where is this coming from? You know, or where is this phobia is coming from, or where this trauma might be coming from. So it's very interesting. I'll never forget, there was a woman I talked to when I was trying to do a conference here in Boston, and I just haven't got a chance to get around to do the conference yet. But I was trying to, you know, get certain people of color that are into the psychedelics and have them come down and do the conference. So I spoke to one woman who's part of the B-Tweet tradition, and she deals with bipolar. She had an experience where the medicine, where she time traveled, and she went back, and she still doesn't know if it was actually seeing a past life situation with herself, or she was viewing one of her ancestral memory. But regardless of the point, she seen herself running through this sugarcane field, and they were slaves. That she was a slave during that time, and they were trying to run to escape slavery. So, you know, again, we really don't know what's in us or what we have to heal. Not even just this lifetime, but even other lifetimes. It's interesting, you know. I mean, for instance, I had an experience where I've seen several of my past lives. I was lucky enough to be able to see them through some of the medicine work. And I seen one of my daughter's past lives. And I seen that in that lifetime, she had a very violent death, you know? So I remember on one of my journeys, I was doing some work with my daughter for her just to release that particular trauma from that lifetime, you know? So, yeah, man, this shit gets fucking crazy sometimes, man.
It's like an onion, like it's so many different layers and so many different directions we can take it.
Oh yeah, definitely, man. And usually, like one of my first Reiki teachers, her name is Janaki. Janaki told me a story of one of her past lives where her neighbor, right? Her neighbor was a big bully to her, right? Her neighbor was always picking on her, and when they were young children, her neighbor would always want her to play pirates with her, right? And her neighbor would always do this thing of she would have to walk the plank and all this, right? Now, years later, when my Reiki teacher, Janaki, got more into herself and started getting into spirituality and all these things, she had a past life experience where she tapped into this past life where I think it was around, forget what period it was. I don't know if it was Victorian era. I'm not sure, but she was definitely, she had money during that lifetime. All right. She was very wealthy during that lifetime. And it was shown that she was kidnapped and she was brought upon on this ship with these pirates. Right. And this pirate, one of the main captain, took advantage of her. He did some real bad things, raped her, did all kinds of stuff. And before he was done with what he was doing with her, he had her walk the plank to her death. She realized that in that very moment that her neighbor, who was the big bully of fellow who walked the plank all the time, was that perpetrator pirate.
Wow.
During that life. Yeah. So it's interesting. This stuff gets very interesting, my friend. The people that you are around currently, your friends, your family, your coworkers, it is totally obvious that y'all, you know, it's more than likely that you've been in lifetimes with each other, several lifetimes with each other.
Yeah, even pets too. Even pets. I think that even though my two dogs can't talk, you know, they were probably siblings or family members in the past, and you know, are here to help me in my journey now. And that brings up another thing too, that probably the most fascinating thing that I heard at the Detroit conference, and I'm wondering if you have some insight on this, is when they were talking about psychedelic use in like cultural sense. So it goes against Western culture, but in other cultures, they use psychedelics, not only giving them to infants, but giving them to pregnant women while giving birth, and also giving them to youth. I bring this up because I've had particular experiences in peyote ceremonies where there'd been babies in there where they give the peyote tea to, and the baby starts singing these wonderful peyote songs, which is amazing. And then also, you know, at the conference, they were talking about giving psilocybin mushrooms as the mother is giving birth to help induce contractions and lower or raise pain tolerance. And then also putting psilocybin in the infant's mouth right when it's born to spark neurogenesis and start opening the brain from inception. What do you think about all those practices?
I think that's fucking amazing. Man. Wow, man. That's like, wow, man. Just imagine that those type of children. You're talking about the avatar babies there. Those are the super babies there. Those are the babies that are going to turn this world around, you know, possibly give us some hope here.
That's what I think too. And everybody here in Colorado is so scared because we just decriminalized mushrooms. Everyone's so scared that, you know, what's going to happen to the kids, and the kids are going to find us and find it's okay. And I'm like, you know, who cares? It's good for them.
You know where all this fear is coming from is because you're dealing with a culture, Western culture, that is out of touch with their ancient history. You know what I mean? We all know that there's shamans around the world. Shamanism is not something that's just for one particular type of people, you know? These ancient earth-based practices have been in every type of race, every ethnicity, every culture, all right? So Western culture, America, the US, I hate to say it, you know, my fellow European brothers and sisters, they have to get back in touch in the times where they were more earth-based, centered. You know, the times of the Druids, for instance, or the times of the Celtic traditions, where you could see that Europeans were more in touch with that aspect of their ancestry. You know what I mean? When we look at the US, when we look at the Western world, they got very out of touch with their spirit side. You know what I mean? They got out of touch with the spirit, and we got into this thing of the Industrial Revolution and this level of materialism. You know, that we got out of touch with the level of spirit. You know, if these people, and I understand the fear, because when a people get out of touch with something, they just don't know. You know, so for instance, in the 1960s, when you had this hippie movement starting in America, right? And my father used to be with so many. He would congregate with so many different type of people. You know, my dad used to play jazz. He even got a chance to play with the famous jazz musician Pharoah Sanders. He met Miles Davis, Dizzy Gillespie, and stuff. So even my dad has a very interesting story. But I remember my father was saying when he went to Woodstock, my dad went to Woodstock, and when he would describe to me the hippie movement, what was going on during that time, the hippies they were tapping into something, but they did not have the framework. They did not have the blueprint or the tradition that what these shamans have. Like when they're giving it, for instance, to their children, when they're coming out the womb, or giving this medicine to their wives or whatever while they're pregnant. The children know this stuff since day one. It's not foreign to them. It's nothing to be feared. It's part of their culture. You know what I mean? Whereas when the hippies started messing with acid and exploring mushrooms and all this stuff, there's a part of them that was screaming out saying, this is part of our heritage. This is part of our culture, but we don't know how to go about it. You know, there's no one to really teach us how to go about with a mushroom ceremony, for instance, or there's no one to teach us about how to make a acid experience a sacred experience so I could get more out of it. You know what I mean? So the framework wasn't there. So when you had people that witnessed these hippies, only thing they could look at is, oh, these guys are dirty. They know they don't wash their hair or whatever. They're just out there, you know? So people from conventional society or, you know, straight edge society, they look at this and they're like, well, we don't want another type of hippie type of thing in Colorado or wherever the next place that's going to legalize this. Because what they're thinking is that there's going to be people that are just going to misuse it or don't know how to use it or go about in a immature way of going about it. Now, let's get this straight. There's times where I think recreational use is fine, totally fine. There's times where you eat some mushroom and you'll get the giggles, have a fun time, maybe even pop on your favorite TV show, Rick and Morty or whatever, and have a blast. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You know, there's nothing wrong with when we look at cultural acceptance, when we will look at cultural drinking, right? Someone sits down, have a little wine with their family, sometimes even let the little children have a sip of wine, right? Now, if that's okay, why is it now these people over here, now that you're dealing with mushroom, no, these people are abusive to their children. How can you give their children this little piece of mushroom or ayahuasca? Well, over here, you give these people over here a little sip of wine. your children over here, I guess it's culturally accepted over here.
Right. So
right?
the cultural context plays a big role for sure. And what, how the family feels about psychedelics or medicines and talks about them, that all plays an influence in that as well.
Big time. Big time. And let's face it, there's a lot of misinformation out about these psychoactive compounds. Let's just face it. Most people don't even take time to research and see what they're about. The only thing they hear is magic mushrooms. Oh, somebody's going to be going tripping, they're going to get hippie trippy, or they're going to go, but no one really sees the benefits. How many people have gone and did the research and see the brilliant data that's coming up from these wonderful universities and say, hey, repairs the brain and it connects the synapses and all these craves addictions, all these different things. No one's looking at that, Only thing they're just reacting from fear.
Yeah, and propaganda and stigma and all that stuff. And you talk about, alcohol is acceptable. Well, in our country, we restrict alcohol with the ages, right? You can't drink till you're 21. Well, in a lot of European cultures, drinking wine starts at a very young age, and it's just part of the daily routine. And so the stigma around alcohol is not there, and so they have much lower levels of alcoholism than we do here. It's
very good point.
Yeah, it's because we restrict things that we have these issues in the first place, because we propagandize and pump out bad education and also restrict people from using them, then they're gonna want to go use them, and now they don't have the resource to go do it safely. Now they have to go do it underground by themselves and risk more danger.
Yes, I agree. I totally agree with you, man. Because listen, there's a part of us. I mean, I have children now. All right, I'm learning shit daily, just being a fucking parent. I'm learning. I'm like, wow. I have a little more sympathy. I have a little more compassion for my own parents now, just being a parent. I was like, I get it. All right. So listen, just being a parent, you understand that rebellion is part of learning. This is about learning about individuality, all right? So if somebody's going to come through and tell you, no, you can't do that, of course, it's going to be more enticing for these youth. You know what I mean? It's going to, this is the rebel without a cause here. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to drink. Fuck you, system. I'm going to drink. We're going to figure out how to fuck. Not only are we going to drink, but we're going to fucking get hammered drink. You know what I mean? So there's a level of rebellion that especially comes with youth. It's natural. You know what I mean? It's just part of learning one's identity and finding your place in this world. But so therefore you made a great point. By putting the stigma there, it's going to make it more enticing. It's going to make it more exciting, but by having it readily available and seeing people that use it without it just being a normal thing, it doesn't have that rebellious type of energy surrounding. Example, there's an ambulance going by, hold on. Example, for instance, Jamaica, right? You look at some of Rastafarian culture, right? Rastafari. You see a lot of the young kids around there seeing the older parents smoking, sometimes even maybe blowing the smoke in the young youth's face or whatever. It's not a stigma. They understand that, hey, they understand ganja is a sacrament. They say, oh, this is my connection to Jah Rastafari. You know what I mean? So therefore, it's not this stigma around it. Oh, you're a pothead, or you're going to be lazy and just sit on the couch all day. There's people that are lazy that are just fucking lazy. All right? And that has nothing to do with smoking weed or what. That's just built in their motherfucking DNA. They're just a lazy motherfucker. All right? Now, listen. You are, and that's what I learned too with these psychedelics. These things put a mirror to your face, and you are who you are. You know what I mean? So there's some people that are just very not motivated, just want to sit on the rest of their life on the couch and play video games. If God wants to learn how to be a fucking lazy bum, well, by all means, all right? But don't blame it on the sacrament. The sacrament. That's the individual. That's like somebody talking about a gun. Gun control. No, it's the individual behind the fucking trigger, you idiot. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people that understand and respect guns and respect weapons. You know what I mean? We understand that martial attitude, and there's respect behind it. All right. We can't help that somebody's not mature. They pick up a gun and all of a sudden now they think they're a tough guy. You know what I mean? That's the individual.
Yeah, and so I think a lot of it goes back to the relationship that you have with these medicines. Because I remember in my youth, my relationship to medicines and to alcohol and to opiates and cocaine, all that stuff I was using it as a coping skill, and it was doing damage, right? Like I was trying to escape.
Yes.
I was trying to escape from my life, and that's the wrong attitude to go into it with, because now my work with all these medicines is more, like you said, like I have an attitude of sacrament, of honor, of respect for it, of ceremony, and also the integration piece before and after too. And it has so much different meaning to me now than it did back then, and so much more benefit than it did.
I was right with you. I think a big majority of us was right with you, because there's plenty of times where I know I'm abusing this weed, or this marijuana at this time, because we have, this society is built on escapism, because we know in our hearts of hearts that life is not meant to just wake up and work your ass away, and then retire and then have a couple of years to your life and then kick the bucket. There's something inside of us that knows that's a violation to life. You know what I mean? We know there's something more to this. So all of us are kicking and screaming and depressed because we know we're living a very plastic-like type of lifestyle. You know what I mean? So depression is something that needs to be talked about, because a lot of people, they run towards the alcohol, they run towards the drugs and different things, because there's something inside of us that knows this is fucked up, man. Something ain't right about this. And we try to figure out ways to try to escape it or to hide from it, rather than look at it straight in the face and say, I'm going to be one of these many warriors to try to change this world. All right. And it's going to change by changing myself first. All right.
That's
and also, I mean, and again, Tai Chi and Qigong was a big tool for me to deal with depression, So, now, yes, I can enjoy a joint when I want to, but I don't need to depend on it to get myself in a relaxed type of state. Now I've learned to say, hey, I could breathe. I could do this type of movement. And now I feel grounded. I feel relaxed. I feel peaceful inside. I don't give a fuck what's going on in the world. You know what I mean? Right now, I feel peaceful inside, and nothing can take that away from me.
Yeah, and so you bring up depression.
That's a gift right there.
Yeah, mm-hmm. and along with depression, all mental illness, we treat it like something's wrong with us. Something's wrong with that person who's mentally ill. But, I mean, from your experience with your mom who dealt with schizophrenia that there's a lot of gifts that come with mental illness as well. I mean, in other cultures, the shamans of the tribe are the people who we would classify as schizophrenic.
Yeah, it would be considered schizophrenic. You're very true about that. Oh man, these medical labels, man. And especially in the later years now, you see all these kids on Ritalin. I mean, like, what is this thing? I mean, a child. I mean, we are looking at these children. Oh, they have too much energy. Children supposed to have fucking energy. You fucking idiots.
Give them something more to do than just stare at a screen.
Exactly, man. Exactly. And let's drug them up. Or now they have whatever term. All these damn terms. All right. Now, schizophrenia, again, traditionally, we look at schizophrenia from a more indigenous type of perspective, and we understand this is the medicine man or medicine woman of the community, of the tribe. Because when we look at schizophrenia, bipolarism, all that, yes, there could definitely be some people out there that are chemically have an imbalance there, all right? But yet then there's individuals that I feel have pierced the veil. Like Jim Morrison from The Doors say, break on through to the other side. There's some people that broke through the other side. my father would talk about this a lot. In the 60s, he said that there was a big phenomena talking about spontaneous Kundalini awakening. All right. This was a term that was coined a lot during the 60s with Kundalini yoga, which that particular yoga is very using a lot of very intense breath work and bringing that, energy up the spine very quickly. Some people believe that Kundalini yoga in some situations where a person would have a spontaneous awakening, like overnight, and say, for instance, I'm here, so-called normal five senses, then overnight, I'm able to have this clairvoyance or clairaudience or what have you. Now I'm hearing spirits, or now I'm seeing spirits, or now the ancestor that passed away is walking through my living room, and no one else sees it, but I see it. Now, from a clinical standpoint, because we deal with the Western world, which deals with just pure material, everything's solid, everything that could touch, taste, smell, this is just this 3D reality. The medical establishment does not know how to deal with a person like that. And the only way they can deal with a person like that is, hey, let's medicate them. Hey, this person's schizophrenic, bipolar, what have you. They're saying that they see Uncle so-and-so in the living room and no one's there, all right?
Right, or they'll say, let's lock them up and shut them away so we don't have to deal with them.
Exactly. Because again, what can they do? They are not at a place of spiritual awareness themselves, or they don't have a spiritual sensitivity to such things. So, that's their first reaction, is to lock them away. There's plenty of people in the insane asylum that are spiritual beings that woke up, that had a spiritual awakening, and their family might come from a very orthodox religious system where, these things might not be talked about or what have you. So, or someone say, oh, that's the devil in you or whatever. It's coming from all these places of fear, rather than looking at the situation at hand, which in many ways we had different blueprints in our culture to deal with people that were going through that. We had other shamans to recognize this. Oh, okay, that person's having a spiritual awakening. This person has been anointed as a shaman here. He's the spirits have embraced him. This is his life path during this time,
Yeah.
So,
are there any important social or important movements in your area towards social consciousness or changes like going on in your particular area that you want to let other people know?
Yeah, I would. I would love to give a shout out to a great woman that's doing great work here in Boston. Her name is Sister Jana, and she has a establishment called the Sustainability Guild. Is geared for artists and also healers of color. We are all inclusive. Anybody can come, no matter what race or what have you, to receive healings and stuff. But we are striving to get more people of color aware of these ancient practices. Because, for instance, when I used to work at this metaphysical bookstore, it used to be called Unicorn Books. The majority of people that would come in these stores were middle-class white Americans, all right? Particularly more women, and I would get frustrated a lot because I would say, these modalities, this knowledge is universal, and it can benefit so many different communities. So my thing is that, like, my whole thing has been, now, how can I spread this knowledge to other communities, especially communities of color or more poverty-stricken communities that would normally would not have access to this particular medicine or this particular type of information.
Nice.
So,
do they have a website?
I think they do. I think you can just Google the Sustainability Guild. Recently, it's real good news that I just got from them. We have a prison here in Boston called South Bay Prison, And I just met one of the directors from that prison there, and they had some of the correctional officers come to the Sustainability Guild, and they were there for a whole day to de-stress themselves. So people were learning about Reiki, they were doing massage, yoga, so many different things. And they were so impressed with what we gave them that day. Now they want us to work in the prison and teach the prisoners. So I'm super excited about this because now I'm gonna be able to teach prisoners, some of the brothers that are locked up, how to do Reiki. You know, those who even want to become a Reiki master, now they can learn out different ways to deal with some of that harsh environment in there and deal with some of those emotions and things that come up, and also give them opportunity to have a job when they get out. So now they have a source of income. They could teach classes themselves. So we're working on trying to make yoga teachers in prison and stuff too. And who knows, you know, I know in Brazil, there's they have a program where they're using ayahuasca for the prisons for prison reform there in Brazil. So who knows? I mean, I would love one day maybe talk to the talk to the people in the prison there and be like, listen, you know, we would love to have to introduce some ayahuasca to the prisoners. Who knows? Who knows where this stuff might go? You know,
awesome.
But I see more people being more open to this stuff because they can't deny the fact that these things do work. And you know, and like even Baba Kalindi said one day on one of his interviews that, you know, the old guards at the door are dying off. So a lot of these guys that, you know, this whole war on drugs, these guys that these politicians and these people that make these decisions on these bills and these laws, a lot of these guys are dying off. So a lot of the baby boomers that went to Woodstock, that were tried acid or mushrooms way back then, now these things are coming to their desk and they're like, well, you know what, we did try that back in the day and it was great. You know, let them have it, you know? So I think a lot of the old guards at the door are dying off and there's a new time. Everything, if anything that I learned even from Buddhism is that the only truth there is change. Change is always consistent.
Yeah.
So we know that nothing stays the same. Even in the most harshest conditions and fucked up, the world could be all crazy, the Trump era, but we understand, if anything, that change is always consistent. So nothing, empires rise and they fall, you know? And I believe the universe allows everyone to be able to have their time to run the show or to rule. And, you know, I you know, because the spirit is not, sees us as all her children, you know? So, yeah.
So if my listeners want to reach out to you and or have questions for you or want to reach out and find out more information about what you're doing or the Sustainability Guild, what's the best way for people to follow you or to reach out and contact you?
Yeah, well, you could always find me on Facebook, you know, under Abdul, ABDUL, Wilkins. You could always message me there or actually I have to delete some stuff off this phone so I could get my messenger back on my phone. But once I do, hopefully I could get everybody's messages and stuff. But yeah, just you could reach out to me on Facebook, man, or on my email, lovemother-earth33@gmail.com. All right.
Awesome.
So yeah, and I look hearing from folk, you know, and if I don't get back to you, just bear with me. I'm a parent and I got 2 little ones and sometimes it gets real busy for me. So yeah.
All right, Dooley. Well, I want to thank you again for coming on the show today. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and you bring such a unique perspective and one that needs to be heard by a lot more people. So thanks again for the time today. I really appreciate it. And
it was a pleasure talking to you, brother. And I thank you for bringing me on your show, man. Anytime I have an opportunity to share some wisdom or any knowledge that I might have, I'm always there for folk, you know what I mean? Because I've noticed how this stuff has helped me over the years. And I use my own life as an example. So I'm like, man, if this can help me and There's things that make me just feel at peace, and this stuff works. So I just really want your audience to know, I mean, like the integration work, all that. Just because you think that, you know, you go to an ayahuasca ceremony on mushrooms, that everything is just turned over. This stuff takes work. It takes work. So if you go to the ayahuasca and the things that you learn, try to integrate that back into your life. Take those lessons. Hey, guys, I'm trying to, oh boy, you know, take those lessons, you know, back to the, you know, from the spirit world back into this world, you know. And if anything, you know, that's all I could say. You know, explore all these things. They're all different pieces to the puzzle, you know. Hey, you know, the mushrooms, try that. The ayahuasca, all that. The yoga, all that. Try anything that resonates with you that's going to help you out to be a better person, you know. So, yeah, all right. So, peace and love to everybody. This is a painting I did, too. Let y'all see it. Yeah, that's a painting I did so many years ago. Yeah, man.
All right, well, we hope to have you back on the show soon.
Yeah, man. We'd love to talk again, man. And peace and love to everybody out there. And keep on doing what you got to do. All right? One love.
So this is Shane Lemaster signing out for Conversations with the Mind. See you guys next time. The Conversations with the Mind podcast is sponsored by mindops.com. You can find us at www.mind-ops.com. We're an eclectic counseling company providing mental health and mental performance services to individuals, small and large groups, teams, businesses, military, through face-to-face sessions or at a distance using phone or confidential video chat apps. We bring a unique Buddhist Western lens and specialize in general psychotherapy for all mental difficulties, sport and performance psychology for performance enhancement, addiction counseling for any maladaptive or destructive habits, and psychedelic integration therapy to make the most from your visionary medicine work. We are available as well for corporate workshops to address the needs of your employees' wellness.